The Alpha Queen of Babylon, Part 2. Chapter 9. The Song of the Ancients. The wind had changed. It came not from the desert now, but from somewhere deeper, older, carrying the sin of burned cedar, old stone, and something else, memory. The pack felt it too. They watched Lilitu differently now, not as an outsider, not even as a wolf. As something else. The morning after the ritual, Naram summoned her to the inner sanctum of the caves. She found him waiting beside a narrow fissure in the rock wall, flanked by two other elders of the broken pack. None of them spoke as she approached. Naram nodded to the crevice. "Go." "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The moment her skin passed into the gap, her bones hummed. The tunnel curved sharply, descending into cool darkness. Symbols glowed faintly along the stone, moons, claw marks, circles within circles. Her eyes adjusted quickly, as if the dark belonged to her now. At the bottom, the passage opened into a low chamber. Carvings covered every inch of the stone, scenes in crude lines, wolves howling at broken moons, crowned figures burning cities, claws raised to the stars. At the center of the chamber sat a woman. Old, blind, covered in ash. Her hair was braided with bones. Her skin was tattooed with thousands of silver dots forming runes Lilitu couldn't read. She sat cross-legged before a small flame that burned white and made no smoke. "I've been waiting for you," the woman said without lifting her head. Lilitu stood still. "You know me. I've seen you. In flame. In water. In bones. In the breath of a dying wolf. What am I?" Lilitu asked. The woman raised her head. "You are the echo of the first howl." The seer's name was Shatter. She was the oldest living member of the broken pack, older than the last kings of the north, older than the ruins buried under sand, older even, some whispered, than memory. She had never shifted. Not once. But the wolves bowed to her all the same. She didn't command with teeth. She spoke with truth. Shatter bid Lilitu sit, then reached into a clay jar and pulled out a strip of dried wolfskin, painted in blood. She dropped it into the white flame. Smoke curled upward, shaped itself into symbols. Moons. Eyes. A sword. A crown. The ancients spoke of a time when the moon would shatter in spirit, when its chosen would be born not from packs, but from pain. "A girl born under the black moon," Shatter said. "Bloodless mother. Nameless life. Rejected by the bond, yet burning with it." Lilitu stared, breath caught. Shatter smiled without mirth. "You were not cursed, child. You were designed." The smoke continued to shift, showing images from long ago. A queen crowned in bone. A city drowned in silver fire. A man torn apart by his mate's howl. "You are not the first to carry the moon in your blood," Shatter whispered. "But you may be the last." Lilitu shook her head. "I didn't ask for this." "No one ever does," said Shatter. "That's what makes prophecy prophecy and not fantasy." Lilitu leaned forward, eyes searching the flame. "What am I meant to do?" "Lead. Destroy. Rebuild. You will burn cities, Lilitu. You will take mates and make enemies. You will stand on mountains of bone and howl the gods who do not answer. And still, you will rise." Silence fell. Then, softly, almost as a song, Shatter began to chant. "Board of silence, cursed by name. Blood of moon and fire's flame. Alpha's wrath, Omega's cry. Wolf of storm, who will not die." When the chant ended, Lilitu felt something inside her shift. Not a transformation, something deeper. Understanding. Her pain had never been an accident. Her rejection had not broken her. It had carved her, prepared her. The moon hadn't cursed her. It had chosen her. And the world would feel the weight of that choice soon. Chapter 10. The Bomb That Broke the City. Prince Belshazzar sat in a chamber of carved stone, surrounded by silk and silence. The incense burned low. The windows had been shuttered for 3 days. He had not slept. Not truly. His eyes were rimmed in gold paint, not for ceremony, but to hide the circles beneath them. His shoulders bore the weight of a kingdom, but it was the weight inside his chest that slowly crushed him. The bond still burned. Even now. It had not faded after the rejection. It had festered. When he turned from Lilitu on the festival dais, he had felt the tether snap, not cleanly, but violently, like a harp string pulled too tight. It tore through his chest and left a wound nothing could reach. He had walked away from her. He had spoken the words they expected. "She is unclean. She bewitched me." It was the temple's fault. The court had praised him. The high priest had nodded. But his body had betrayed him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Not in silk and song, but in ash and silver. Eyes that glowed like truth. A howl buried in her throat, louder than his crown. The first nightmare came the night after her escape. He stood on the palace roof, watching Babylon burn, and in the smoke he saw her walking barefoot across the marble, her hands red, her shadow long and crawling. He tried to call for guards, but no sound came. She turned and smiled. When he awoke, there was blood on his tongue. His personal guards now slept at his door. He told no one. In the court, his power remained untouchable, but fragile. Whispers spread behind his back. Some called him cursed. Others wondered why the girl hadn't been executed outright. The priest assured the nobles that the creature had fled, but those who had seen the north gate burn whispered a different story. She didn't flee. She was reborn. Belshazzar's closest advisor, Enlil Marduk, was the one who pressed him hardest. A thin man with a serpent's grace, Enlil wore loyalty like a robe, visible but false. He had been his father's counselor, and now whispered in the prince's ear with equal venom. "You must sever it completely," Enlil said one morning, his hands folded, voice low. "The bond?" Belshazzar asked, staring into the reflection pool. "No," Enlil replied. "Her. Lilitu. She is alive. And if she returns?" "She won't." Enlil's eyes narrowed. "Do you feel her still?" Belshazzar said nothing. The silence was answer enough. That night, Enlil met with the High Temple Council in secret. They sat in a windowless chamber beneath the ziggurat, surrounded by flickering braziers and walls etched with ancient wards, wards meant to repel beasts and spirits. Wards that had not worked on Lilitu. "She is of the old blood," said Nabaru, the high priest. "We let her live too long." "She threatens everything," said a noblewoman. "The bond cannot be ignored. If she returns, if she claims him, we lose Babylon." Enlil said nothing until the room fell quiet. Then, softly, "We do not wait for her to return. We hunt." They called for the quiet Fong, an ancient sect of werewolf blood hunters loyal not to packs, but to coin. They were said to carry poison claws and enchanted chains. No pack would claim them. No territory would welcome them. They were cleaners of ancient bloodlines. Once unleashed, they did not stop. Meanwhile, Belshazzar returned to the shrine of Marduk alone. No priests. No guards. He knelt before the stone altar, head bowed, fist clenched. "Why her?" he asked the god who had never spoken. "Why not someone else?" He felt nothing in return. Only silence. And the echo of a bond he had tried to destroy. It throbbed again in his chest, a slow, aching pulse, as if her heartbeat lived within his own. He hated her for it. For the power she now had over him. For the power he had given away. For the truth he could not forget. He had felt the bond. And he had lied. Not to protect the city. Not to protect himself. But because he was afraid. Afraid of what she would awaken in him. Afraid that if he looked too long, he would follow her and never return. But now the court had plans. The hunters were coming. And soon, the city would believe the lie again. "She's dead," they would say. "It is finished." But deep in his chest, Belshazzar knew the truth. It was not finished. She had held once. And the world had shaken. Chapter 11. Ashwolves. The desert had names. None of them were kind. The Babylonians called it the Sea of Bones, a stretch of ruin and ruin makers, home to things that could not be tamed or taxed. To the nomads, it was the dying silence. To the broken pack, it was simply home. But to Lilitu, it became the forge. Here, beneath sun and moon, she would make something new. Not in the image of the packs that exiled her. Not in the broken tradition of the city that tried to kill her. But in her own image. Born of fire. Raised from ash. She found the first of them within a week. A boy no older than 10, half-starved and chained to a rusted stake outside a ruined trading post. His captors, mercenaries loyal to a forgotten noble house, had branded his back with the word beast. They had tried to drown the wolf inside him. They succeeded only in making it mad. When Lilitu arrived, the mercenaries laughed. By dawn, the sand drank their blood. She broke the boy's chain, carried him into shade, and fed him from her own kill. He never asked who she was. He only said, "I heard your howl. I followed it in my sleep." She named him Kesh, after the storm winds that come without warning. The second came days later, a woman twice Lilitu's age, scarred across her chest and missing half her right ear. Her name was Tamar, and she had once been the alpha of a mountain pack before they turned on her for refusing a forced mating. She bore her wounds like jewelry. When she found Lilitu, she didn't kneel. She said, "I heard a howl that didn't ask permission." Lilitu looked her in the eye. "Then stay." They came one by one after that. Not many. Not at first. A former temple acolyte who had never shifted but saw wolves and mirrors. A mute desert runner whose hands turned to claws under moonlight. A twinskin, a wool-born with two spirits trapped in one body, constantly at war. They had no homes. No names the world would speak. But when they saw Lilitu, they saw something older than pain and stronger than fear. They saw a future. They gathered in a crumbled ruin at the edge of the dying silence, a place the old ones called Tolbaser, the place of the silent stones. Here, walls had long since fallen, but ancient glyphs still glowed beneath the sand. It was not safe. It was not sacred. But it was theirs. Lilitu carved a sigil on the largest standing stone. A half-moon with a claw through it. The mark of the ash wolves. Each night, they trained. Not in the way of cities, or old packs, or temple-blessed rites. They trained to survive. To strike. To vanish. They learned to speak without sound. To read the stars like maps. To run for days without water, to smell lies on the wind, to kill without shame and mourn without weakness. And in the center of it all, Lilitu. Watching. Guiding. Leading. Not with threat, but with presence. They would have died for her. Some already had. On the seventh night, Tamar approached her after sparring. "You're building an army," she said. Lilitu shook her head. "I'm building a pack." Same thing, in the end. "No," Lilitu replied, her voice steady. "An army follows fear. A pack follows blood." "And what are we?" Tamar asked. "What blood ties us?" Lilitu looked at the moon. The kind no one wants to name. That night, the sky turned strange. Not a storm. Not an eclipse. A ring around the moon, wide, silver, and seething. The pack gathered in silence. Lilitu stood before them. "This is not just our sky," she said. "This is our time." She raised her arms, silver blood still drying on her wrist from training scars. "They will say we are monsters, that we are mistakes, but they forget the truth." She turned slowly, eyes gleaming. "We are the first pack the moon did not choose. We chose ourselves." And the wolves howled. Not in sorrow, not in hunger, not in fear. They howled as one. From that night forward, they were no longer forgotten. They were no longer cast-offs. They were ash wolves. And soon, the world would remember their name. Chapter 12. The Blood Pact. The moon turned red. Not by chance, not by season. This was not a natural eclipse. This was something else. The old ones whispered that when the red moon rose without shadow, it meant the world had shifted, that somewhere, a line had been crossed, and nothing would be the same again. Tonight, that line ran through Tolbaser. Lilitu stood in the center of the ruin, barefoot on sand-warm stone. Her hands were wrapped in strips of linen soaked in blood, her own, and her pack's. At her feet lay a shallow basin carved into the floor, etched with symbols older than the cities that ruled them. It had once been used by priests to bless the dying. Tonight, it would bind the living. They had come willingly. All of them. Tamar, scarred and silent, carrying fire in her eyes. Kesh, still small, but fast as a whisper and deadly with his teeth. Nema, the mute desert runner. Saren and Soli, the twin-bodied wolf who dreamed with two minds. The red-eyed one, who never spoke of her past and never missed a kill. 12 in all. Not a war band. Not a hunting party. A pack. But not yet. Not until the bond was sealed. There were no elders to guide them. No old rites to follow. Lilitu would not invoke the laws of the city-born packs, their alpha trials, their blood purity tests, their heirlooms and matings arranged under priestly eyes. She had been rejected by all of that. And now she would build something untouchable by their rules. She raised a shard of obsidian to her palm and cut herself, deep, slow, without flinching. The blood dripped into the basin. Silver blue, bright in the firelight. She passed the shard. Each member followed, one by one. Tamar. Kesh. Nema. The rest. 12 wounds. 12 drops. The basin filled until it shimmered like a pool of liquid moonlight. Lilitu knelt beside it. "Old laws made us outcasts," she said, her voice low but resonant. "Old bloodlines deemed us impure. Old bonds left us chained or starving." She looked up. "But this." She placed her hand into the blood. This is ours. One by one, they stepped forward and placed their hands into the basin. The blood grew warmer. It pulsed. A deep hum filled the air, like a drumbeat beneath the ground. Lilitu's skin began to glow faintly, the same silver hue as the night she first howled. Then came the bond. But not like the faded ones the old pack spoke of, not the soul tether that had broken her with Belshazzar. This was something new. A chosen bond. A living one. It flowed between them like a current, hot, ancient, and alive. Their breath synchronized. Their heartbeats aligned. Their memories flickered in one another's minds. Kesha's terror in chains. Tamar's rebellion. Nima's last word before she went silent. They felt each other. Not completely. Not permanently. But deeply enough to matter. Lilitu stood, the blood drying on her hands, her voice firm now. From this night forward, you are no one's cast-offs. No one's mistakes. No one's secret shame. You are ash wolves. Bound by choice. Held by will. And I am not your owner. I am not your leash. She placed her hand on her chest. I am your alpha, because I stand with you. A gust of wind swept the fire, lifting sparks into the air like stars. And in the stillness, 12 voices howled. A chorus of broken things, now whole. Far across the desert, in shrines built to gods long deaf to prayer, the fire in certain lamps dimmed. In Babylon, a priest dropped a scroll and felt his skin crawl. And in a chamber lined with silk and silence, Prince Belshazzar woke from a dream of wolves and felt a shiver he could not name. The ash wolves had been born, and the world had just gained a new heartbeat. Chapter 13. Whispers of the Moon in Babylon. The wolves had not returned, but their scent lingered. In the alleys of the lower quarters. In the burned sand outside the north gate. In the dreams of those who once whispered her name and now only mouthed it in silence. Lilitu. They did not call her a girl anymore. Not a priestess. Not a beast. Now she had a new name. The moonborn. And in Babylon, names had power. The rumors came like smoke. At first, soft and shapeless. A merchant returned from the dying silence with strange news. I saw a stone temple on fire with no flame. Heard howling at noon, no animals in sight. Then a caravan guard. A woman with silver eyes stood on a dune, and the wolves knelt. A noble slave. They say she formed a new pack. Not the old bloodlines. Something wild. A farmer's wife. She burned a mark into the ground with her bare hand. A half-moon and a claw. The city heard. The court denied. But the whisper grew teeth. Inside the palace walls, Belshazzar sat on his marble throne as courtiers draped him in praise and priests bathed him in chants. But he didn't hear them. He heard her. The bond had not snapped. It had changed. Before, it had pulled him like a chain around the neck. Now, it stalked him like breath behind his ear. And every night, he dreamed of her, standing above him, blood on her hands, not begging, choosing. The High Temple Council met again, deeper underground this time, where the walls were thicker and the torches didn't flicker with passing wind. We've confirmed sightings, said Enlil Marduk, unrolling a scroll. She's alive. In the desert. Not alone. How many? Asked Nabaru. 12. Maybe more. Fighters. Blooded. Trained. Nabaru scowled. Rogues. No, said Enlil. Worse. A pack. The word hung in the air like ash. Impossible, muttered one of the scribes. The bond was broken. Enlil's eyes narrowed. The bond was refused. That's not the same. In the marketplace, artists began carving small talismans of wolf heads under moons. Not as curses. As protection. Young women began wearing silver threads on their wrists. She protects the cast out, they said. She walks with those no one wants. She burns the liars. In the outer districts, 3 guards dragged a beggar into the street for theft. He bared his teeth and held. The sound was raw, wrong, human, but no one laughed. 2 of the guards stepped back. 1 ran. Even the children began to change their games. In the sand, they carved circles. They chose 1 girl to be the moonborn. She stood in the center while the others circled her, chanting. She was forgotten, but now she is queen. She walks in fire. Her howl is seen. In the palace, Belshazzar watched the moon through a carved window. It was full again, and red. He had not eaten in a day, could not keep wine down, could not stop touching his chest where the bond once burned. He had begun to draw her symbol, over and over. A half-moon, a single claw through it. He burned the parchments after. But it didn't stop. "Why don't you sleep?" his concubine asked softly, touching his bare shoulder. He flinched. "She's coming back, isn't she?" He said nothing. But he knew. It was not a matter of if, only when. The High Temple began drafting new laws quietly. New punishments for unauthorized bonding. New rituals to cleanse wolf blood from priests and nobles. A secret order to gather werewolf children before they could awaken. The nobles grew nervous. One whispered, "If she walks back through the gates, the people will kneel." Another, "They already are." One morning, a servant girl was caught humming a strange song in the prince's courtyard. Born of pain and blood she came. Fire voice and silver name. When questioned, she couldn't say where she heard it. It had always been there, she said. Like a memory. Like a howl beneath the heart. And across the sands, beyond the gates, Lilitu stood on a rise of stone, watching the city shimmer in the distance. She had not stepped foot in it since her exile. But she felt it. The pulse of the bond. The tremble in the marble. The fear in the towers. They whispered her name now. They would scream it soon. And she was no longer a girl cast out. She was Alpha. And Babylon had begun to remember what it tried to bury. Chapter 14. The Eyes of Persia. The letter arrived by Hawk. No seal. No signature. Only a strip of dark leather tied around the leg of a bird bred for high altitudes and long distances. It landed on the jagged ridge just above Tolbaser, eyes sharp, wings silent. Tamar found it first. She didn't open it, she knew better. She brought it to Lilitu without a word. Lilitu sat at the edge of a shallow pool fed by an underground spring, steam rising in soft coils around her. She took the letter, unwrapped it, and read. The parchment was black. The ink, silver. The writing was precise, clipped, military. To the one they call moonborn. Your fire is not unnoticed. What Babylon fears, others may respect. We watch the stars, too. If you are more than legend, meet me where the desert bleeds into stone. Come alone. Bring teeth, not wolves. K. Lilitu read it twice. Then again. Tamar, arms folded, leaned against the cave wall. What do you think? I think, Lilitu said, folding the parchment, we've been seen. 3 nights later, she stood on the red plateau that marked the border between Babylon's forgotten lands and the Persian East. The sky was moonless. A carpet of stars stretched above her, brighter than any torch. She smelled the campfire long before she saw it. A single tent, 3 horses, and a man seated in front of the flame, sharpening a blade that didn't belong to this world. Cameron. He did not rise when she approached, but he looked up, and she felt it instantly. Not a bond. Not a pull. A recognition. The kind you only feel when 2 predators lock eyes and neither lowers their gaze. He was tall, shoulders wide, black hair cropped close. His face was marked by a scar that ran from temple to jaw, but his eyes were calm. Cold, but not cruel. He stood as she drew near. You came, he said. Lilitu didn't smile. You summoned me. He nodded once. So I did. They stared at each other across the fire, 2 figures cut from shadow and silence. Then Cameron said, The stories said you walked through fire and turned wolves to ash. Stories lie, Lilitu replied. They also survive. So do parasites. Cameron smiled, small and sharp. You're everything they feared. And what are you? He stepped closer. A man who serves a king, but no longer follows him. Cameron was a general in the eastern campaigns of Cyrus the Great, tasked with watching the desert borders and the rumors rising from Babylon's failures. He had seen the signs. Burnstone that couldn't be explained. Animals moving in patterns that defied logic. Tales of a wolf woman who walked unharmed through moonfire. He had dismissed them until he felt it himself. The night the red moon rose, he woke with his heart pounding, his blood on fire, and a single word in his mouth. Lilitu. I am Wolf, he said now, watching her closely. But I've never been pack. Never followed an alpha. Never wanted to. Lilitu tilted her head. And yet here you are. He nodded. You howl louder than any command I've ever obeyed. He offered her food. Dried lamb, salted rice, bitter fruit. She did not eat. He offered her water. She drank without breaking eye contact. He handed her a silver ring, ancient Persian, carved with the crest of the moon lion. A gift, he said. Lilitu held it up to the firelight. I don't belong to you. Cameron met her gaze. No, but maybe the world does. They spoke for hours. Not of romance. Not yet. of strategy, of bloodlines, of the quiet Fong, the death sect hired by the Temple Council, of war maps, of alliances. Cameron spoke of Persian cities that would open their gates if she arrived with a true pack behind her. Lilitu spoke of visions, of fire, of prophecy. He listened. She studied him. And beneath the quiet fire, something old stirred. Not lust, not love. Possibility. When she rose to leave, Cameron stepped forward. You'll return. Perhaps. Do I need to send another hawk? Lilitu turned, her cloak catching the wind. No, she said. I'll find you. She paused, then added, without looking back. We find our own now. And she vanished into the dark. Cameron watched the flames die, then drew his blade again. He had spent his life killing things for kings. But now, he wondered if he might build something. And for the first time, the general dreamed of a kingdom not ruled by men, but by wolves. Chapter 15. The Howl at the Ziggurat. Babylon slept poorly that week. The air was too still. The dogs refused to bark. The river moved slower than it should, its surface glassy and gray. People said the moon felt closer, that it blinked, that it watched. But in the shadow of the great ziggurat of Marduk, the priest worked harder than ever. More chants, more incense, more sacrifices to cleanse the city's blood of wolf taint. And at the top of the highest stair, a plan was forming, one they believed would silence the whispers for good. And Lil Marduk stood beside High Priest Nabaru as the sun rose. She's nothing but a trick, Enlil said. Smoke and superstition. Nabaru's fingers twitched over his prayer beads. She is memory made flesh, myth with teeth. And we let her go. We're the High Temple, Enlil spat. She is a feral woman with a dozen mongrels and a few loyal peasants. She cannot hold ground. She cannot return. But even as he said it, the wind changed. It began at dawn. A sound, not quite thunder, not wind. A howl. Low. Rolling. Not near, but not far enough. Guards looked up from their posts. Priests dropped their censers. The pigeons nesting in the ziggurat stonework scattered. And then someone screamed. The first body was found at the base of the ziggurat. A temple scribe, trusted, loyal, unremarkable, hung upside down from a carved column, his chest bared, his blood used to draw a symbol. A half-moon. A single claw. And beneath it, one word carved in ancient wolfglyph. Remember. By midday, more signs had appeared. Scratches along the palace gate, deep, deliberate, shaped like runes, not battle. A merchant found silver bones left on his cart, tied with black twine. An old soldier who once guarded Lilitu's cell was found in the irrigation canal, throat unmarked, but eyes clawed out. And at the temple's heart, in a hidden garden where only the elite prayed, someone had carved into the roots of the sacred fig tree. The moon sees your lies. Nabaru demanded silence. He claimed the markings were blasphemous illusions, that the scribe was killed by cultists. He forbade his priests from speaking Lilitu's name. But the name was already everywhere, on the lips of children, in songs sung by servant girls, in coded messages passed between lower priests. She is near. She is rising. The Alpha has teeth. In the noble quarter, Belshazzar stood in the great bathhouse, watching steam rise through marble arches. He touched the stone beside him smooth, warm, until he saw it. Claw marks. 3, precise. Fresh. His vision blurred. He turned too quickly, slipped, caught himself on the edge. You're losing your mind, he told himself. You killed the bond. But the air was thick, and the back of his neck burned. And in the mirror across the bath, he saw her eyes, just for a blink, and then gone. Far from the palace, in the poorer quarters, a child howled in her sleep and woke to find her eyes glowing faint silver. Her mother covered her in blankets, sobbing, whispering a lullaby. Hide your teeth, child. The moon is listening. That night, Lilitu stood on a ridge overlooking the distant ziggurat. The stars watched in silence. At her side, Tamar, face painted with ash. Beside her, Kesh, eyes wide with anticipation. A dozen others, cloaked in bone and leather, breathing the city's scent like old blood. Lilitu raised her hand. I gave them silence, she said. I gave them time. She lowered it. They answered with poison and ghosts. From behind her, 3 wolves emerged from the shadows, massive, silent. Runes burned into their fur. The moonborn's chosen scouts. They dropped something at her feet. A scroll, marked with the seal of the quiet Fong. Tamar read it aloud, eyes narrowed. Kill the girl. Kill the pack. Leave no blood to bind. Kesh growled low. Lilitu smiled, cold, not cruel. So now they send hunters. She turned toward the city. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Let them come. Let them see who hunts whom. Behind her, the wolves began to howl. And this time, the city heard it, not just as sound, but as memory, as warning, as promise. Chapter 16, The Red Feast. Babylon, for all its splendor, had always known how to lie with elegance. And no lie was more practiced than the Festival of Renewal, a feast held once a year to bless the city, honor the gods, and remind the people that order ruled over chaos. But this year, it was different. This year, the gods were quiet. This year, the moonborn shadow stretched over every prayer. So the High Temple Council did what it knew best. It threw a celebration. Louder, brighter, bloodier. They called it the Feast of Purity. A red and gold affair, drenched in wine, incense, and ritual. Fountains were dyed crimson with pomegranate juice. Dancers painted their bodies with spiral runes. Children wore wolf masks, parading through the streets as a mockery of the wild queen. In the royal square, a massive platform was built, a stage for a cleansing. A public burning of scrolls marked with Lilitu's sigil. A mock execution of a traitor dressed in wolfskin. A declaration that the moonborn had no power here. Belshazzar stood at the center of it all, gold-crowned and hollow-eyed. He wore white robes stitched with sapphire threads. But beneath the embroidery, his wrists were wrapped in bandages. The bonds still flared in his dreams, and the wolves still howled in his ears. But he smiled, because he had to, because the priests were watching, because the people expected it, because no one knew what was already inside the city. At the edge of the celebration, a beggar boy watched the stage. His face was smudged with ash, his clothes torn. No one paid him attention. Not when he weaved through crowds. Not when he slipped into alleys. Not when he dipped his fingers into the fountains and whispered to himself. By the time the sun began to lower, the boy had touched 7 places across the city, each with the same words, whispered low. Ash to ash. She sees. Inside the palace kitchens, a servant girl hummed. She moved without fuss, without pause. No one noticed when she poured a small vial of black liquid into a wine cask, or when she scratched a crescent into the bottom of a golden platter, or when she left a single wolf's tooth in the high priest's seat. She didn't stay to see what happened. She walked into the cellar and never came out. As the feast reached its peak, drums thundered through the city square. Belshazzar stood, arms raised, flanked by priests and guards. Tonight, he proclaimed, we cleanse the poison from our name. Cheers. Tonight, we burn the lies of the beast queen. Louder cheers. He nodded. The guards brought forth a man bound in chains, covered in wolfskin. He was a convicted thief. His death was real. His identity was not. They placed him before a pyre carved with false runes. The fire was lit. The crowd howled, not in grief, but mockery. But then, the wind changed. It came suddenly, sharp, cold. From the east, unnatural. The flames twisted. Smoke bent sideways. And from the rooftops surrounding the square, a sound rose. A howl. Not one. 6. Simultaneous. Perfect. Inhuman. The crowd froze. Children dropped their wooden wolf masks. The priest turned pale. Belshazzar's cup fell from his hand. And then, the fountain of Marduk exploded. Not with fire. With blood. Real blood. It sprayed upward in a geyser, dyed red with truth. Within it, rising like a ghost from the flood, stood a figure wrapped in black linen, face painted with ash, and eyes glowing silver. She didn't speak. She didn't have to, because every child in the square whispered her name first. Lilitu. But it wasn't her. It was one of the ash wolves. A scout. A mimic. And by the time the guards reached her, she had already dropped a second sigil into the water. A claw. A moon. And a single word beneath it. Soon, panic bloomed. Some claimed to see wolves on the rooftops. Others said they saw shadows shift behind the torches. One priest collapsed foaming at the mouth, bitten by something no one else could see. The fire died. The feast turned to screaming. And from across the river, from the far hills of the east, a true howl echoed across the city. High. Long. Final. In the chaos, Belshazzar retreated into the palace. Alone. He tore off his crown, ripped open his collar, and stared at the wound just above his heart. It had begun to bleed again. Not from blade, not from illness, but from bond. Because she had not returned to take revenge. She had returned to claim what was hers. Back at Tulbaser, Lilitu stood atop a broken pillar as the scouts returned. One by one, they knelt. Tamar handed her a single gold coin taken from the palace kitchens. Lilitu turned it over, then tossed it into the fire. They mocked the wolves, she said, loud enough for her pack to hear. Now they dream of us. Kesh grinned. Tamar bared her teeth. The others howled. And Lilitu, silent, strong, smiling, watched the flames rise. We don't need to take the city, she said. We make it beg for surrender. Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.